Authorities are counting the costs following the recent destruction of infrastructure in KwaZulu-Natal due to the adverse weather. This is while several municipalities across the country are also in crisis and face total collapse. This is as a result of various issues, but mostly relating to service delivery. Some municipalities have been unable to pay salaries, while others can't pay suppliers, such as Eskom. Well, how much of a setback is this going to be for local government? We're joined by Sabelo Gwala. He's SALGA's executive officer in KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Mr. Gwala. Firstly, before we go anywhere, let's talk about then the impact of the recent weather conditions that you've experienced in your province. What has that been on the infrastructure there?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. First of all, we must send our condolences to the people of Umshwathi local municipality and New Hanover area and Empolweni area as well. Any loss of life is extremely regrettable and unfortunate, and these weather patterns are of great concern. And we must find ways to deal with them and find ways to mitigate the risk against such weather patterns. When it comes to a time like this, when we're having a lot of rain, it's a rainy season, it is to be expected that there will be a number of flooding in certain areas. So municipalities, you would have seen over the past 3 months on a dry we've made a significant effort to in the work, but what we are dealing with here, and the viewers would know that climate change is a reality. We are seeing it every day in our everyday lives in terms of droughts and extreme weather patterns, and we should begin now to expect that such occurrences will become something that we must start to prepare for, as all efforts globally to fix the way we produce what we eat needs to change, but all efforts are moving quite slowly, and we need more radical change if we are going to meet our climate change targets.
I want to talk about the readiness of the municipality then incapacitating, in particular, residents for some of the conditions that you have been experiencing. I wonder the kind of relationship that you have built with the South African Weather Service to ensure that even where there are warnings that have been issued, the message is quickly communicated, especially to those areas that would be most affected. Many of the residents in Empolweni seem to be caught completely unawares by the extent of the kind of weather they'd be experiencing yesterday.
What developed yesterday was something that would not have ordinarily reports in the afternoon of a developing tornado. It ended up being 2 tornadoes. But our relationship starts back about 5 years ago, when we as SALGA lobbied government to say we need to change the laws of this country to allow local municipalities such as Umshwathi, where Empolweni falls under, to be able to plan for disasters, because the law up to 5 years ago was only saying up to a district could plan for disaster, could put funds available, make funds available for disasters. So about 5 years ago, we were able to succeed in getting that to be a law, and now municipalities have at least the ability to plan for risk reduction and so forth. Where we also succeeded was in getting National Treasury to put aside funding, and we saw 300 million being put aside for claims on disaster, and we will be has has got such a contingency fund now available. Those are the improvements we have seen over the past 5 years, which have made South Africa more ready. But I think what we learned yesterday is that we need to do more on the ground to have ways and means of communicating quite quickly. We do have ways for people who live in flood-lying areas or below staying in below the flood line. But in this case, we were dealing with ordinary citizens whom one wouldn't expect really that they would face a flood or something of that sort. So it's something that we now have to ask ourselves what further measures we can put in place to address this.
Given your planning system and some of what you've just taken us through, it sounds that you had anticipated even 5 years ago that there would be some kind of impact on the municipality as far as whatever changes may be in weather patterns. I wonder how much investment you're putting into early detection systems, because while a tornado, the tornado's experience might be out of the norm, certainly the flooding has not been the case. Early in the year, we saw severe flooding hit parts of KZN as well.
Yes, that is correct. Seen that we may communities being relocated because they were living in areas that were seen to not be suitable in cases of flood. What we are facing here in South Africa is a number of factors meeting migration. So you are seeing people moving into previously unoccupied land, and that land would not have been tested, would not have had any surveying that would have happened. And we are seeing as well our courts saying municipalities have an onerous burden of providing temporary shelter when people have been relocated. And that all places a municipality like Mshwati in a very difficult position, because you would remember specifically the area we are talking about, Mpolweni, is an area where over the past 3 to 4 years we saw a lot of people moving into that area, staying in that area, whereas before it would have been an area largely unoccupied. So we have seen human migration also impacting us quite a lot. What we are saying as SALGA is that we do need the census by Statistician General and Statistics South Africa to be done more regularly, so that a municipality like Mshwati, which receives a number of people coming from all over wanting to stay there because of job opportunities and the like, those people would not have been counted in the census before, and we need them to also be included in how much money does Mshwati actually get from government. And the same is being said by eThekwini as well, because they are also receiving a number of people coming from outside eThekwini whom they need to accommodate. But our funding streams at the moment only say after 10 years we will do another census, and it's quite costly to do one more regularly than that. We must admit that the efforts we have seen from our municipality thus far need to be complemented by a number of other factors as well, such as, for an example, traditional leaders need to also factor in rain and weather patterns when locating people in certain areas. We need a holistic approach, because what this climate change is telling us is that if we continue the way we've been doing, we will meet new threats which we previously would not have anticipated. As you would know, that a tornado is not really something that would feature high in terms of a risk factor that a municipality like Mshwati would include in its risk assessment.
I wonder then what happens over the next couple of days, as it's anticipated that some of the weather conditions which you've been experiencing will persist, not necessarily at the level of tornadoes, but certainly as far as those thunderstorms are concerned. What is the municipality's plan?
Well, the municipality now has got a team on the ground that will do an assessment in terms of what are the damage that has been done. We also have got a risk profile of the municipality in terms of where are the areas which are more at risk in terms of flood and so forth. And those are the things we can actually plan for. If there were to be a tornado in the near future, that is something that we expect to be guided by the National Disaster Management Center as to how we respond, because that is something that would ordinarily not be something that a municipality like Mshwati would have preparedness for. This is why, if you were to check how municipalities across South Africa have got what is called building inspectors. Building inspectors need to be allowed to inspect all these new settlements and make sure that these homes are built according to specifications, because if that is not being done, in a situation like this, we could have seen even much worse and far higher loss of life than what we saw, because we make sure that every building built, there is an inspector who visits there and checks that the specifications were in accordance. That is not something you readily see in developing countries, but in South Africa, we've made sure that that happens. But I'm assuring citizens that we have systems in place to make sure that we communicate in terms of the risk profile of every municipality. In the event of an unforeseen circumstance, such as a tornado and so forth, we rely heavily on the Weather Service of South Africa to notify us so that we can loud hail in the area. And where people then hear on radio and television those messages, they would then need to comply with the relocation plans that would then be put in place.